Clementine, the drummer in Zepparella. Welcome to the Zepparella Learning Channel. This is my third video in my series on how to play Kashmir on the drums. In the first video we went through the main groove, and then in the second video we went through the bridge, and now we're going to take it to the chorus. Now, as we said in the first video, most of the song is played with the basic groove, which is the 16th notes on the 1 and the 3, played on the bass drum. In the chorus, it really straightens out. He doesn't play those anymore. He lets go of those 16th notes, and he'll start to play a lot of those kind of ghost notes, those 16th ghost notes, more on the snare drum. His bass drum actually gets a lot more solid, a lot more steady, a lot more, even more settled, even if it's possible, than the rest of the song. So for instance, here is the first couple measures of the first chorus. Okay, that's the first 4 measures of the chorus, and you hear how those he's playing on the 8th notes. The kick, if he's playing an extra kick drum in a measure, he's playing them on the 8th notes, and he's adding notes on the snare drum now instead. It makes it feel, as you're playing it with the rest of the instruments, it starts making it feel very very settled in and very, I don't want to say square, but in a way it is square. There aren't a lot of, at first especially, it's like he establishes this kind of freight train feel. You know, it's just like it's right in the groove. There's no, the 16th notes go away, and it does something to your ear to not hear those things going on. It starts to really straighten out and become, that makes it kind of feel kind of epic in this way. If you look at the 3rd and 4th measure of what I just played, he starts to displace the 1 and start to put his kick drum on the and of 1. Sometimes he does it on the and of 3. That makes this kind of syncopated thing happen, which is very related to what the guitar and the bass are playing. And it kind of, when you listen to this over and over and you play along, you start to really feel what the musical cue is for when he does that. It's some kind of accent that he's doing either with the vocal or with the guitar and the bass. And what that sounds like is this. It's like it becomes this little swinging thing that happens. And he does that quite frequently throughout the chorus, throughout both of the choruses. And it's like he's playing very straight, and then he'll put those little spaces there, displacing that 1 beat. And that adds a little bit of swing to it, a little bit of bounce to this part. And as you listen to it, you'll start to hear those things that the guitar and the bass and the vocal are doing that Bonham seems to be going with, seems to be emphasizing, and that's why he does that in those places. So the first fill that I want to talk about is at the end of the 8th measure of the first chorus. And this fill in the recorded version is pretty much the fill that he does in different ways. Which is that he is playing 16th note triplets, either staying on the snare drum or moving it around the drums. Okay, this is how the fill goes very slowly. So it's 16th note triplets. So the way that you're going to count it is one triplet and triplet. So that is in each beat. First of all, think about there's going to be 6, 3, and 3. So you're going to play the kick drum as the first beat of the first triplet that you're going to play. There's going to be the second beat of the first triplet is going to be blank, so the kick drum actually gets 2 beats when you think about it. So it's going to go 3 triplet, right? So your roll is actually going to start on the last triplet, the last little beat of that first triplet. So it's almost like a pickup note. So very slowly it's going to go 3 triplet, 4 triplet, and triplet. Okay, I did it. It's hard to do this slow. Okay, so again, this is going to be a roll. Now, Bonham does this a lot. He kind of plants the bass drum, giving it like a whole, giving it 2 of the triplets, right? Giving it 2 of the first triplet beats, giving it like a little breath to kind of plant himself, and then he goes for the roll. And he does that in a lot of rolls that I've noticed when he's going around the thing. He'll always kind of like anchor himself with one hit, either on the snare drum or a crash or a kick drum, and then he'll kind of move through the thing. So again, we're just playing 16th note triplets, which are counted as 1 triplet and triplet, right? So there are 6 of them for every beat. And we're going to play 6 between the kick drum and the snare drum, 3 on the rack drum, and 3 on the floor tom. So it's going to be 3 triplet and triplet, 4 triplet and triplet. So just keep doing that. 3 triplet. So you'll notice that little pause with the kick drum, it kind of gets you ready, right? Think about your sticking too. So you'll notice I start with the left hand just so that I can get over in the right way. Triplets are always tricky to figure out which one do I start so that I'm not kind of crossing myself up. We haven't gotten yet to the crossover at bottom. I don't know. I guess that's in Dazed and Confused. I'll talk about that. But we don't want to do that unless we need to. So I start with my left hand. I give the kick drum that nice breath, and then I move around. In other places, he'll stick to the snare drum. And in this song, they have this beautiful phaser sound. It kind of sounds like a flangey phaser sound that happens on the snare drum. When he's doing those triplet rolls and he keeps it on the snare drum. So because when I'm playing live I don't have any kind of effect like that, I tend to do a lot more rolls around the kit than he did. I also mix up playing an 8th note triplet into a 16th note triplet roll. That can be really fun and can add some kind of different elements to things. Sometimes I do the triplets between the drums, like so I kind of do it rolls like that between the drums that way, which he does not do at least in the album version. Maybe he did that live, but that kind of adds a little extra interest as well. Another thing that I do with these fills sometimes is I play over the bar line, which in my last video series on Immigrant Song, I talked for a little bit about what it's like to play over the bar line. And what that would mean is I would play at maybe an extra 16th note triplet pattern through the 1 of the next measure. And that can make it interesting too, although it can really kind of confuse everybody if you do it wrong. So make sure that you can do that right. But anyway, okay, so that is those 16th note fills. He does that quite frequently in the choruses, and he'll lengthen them and he'll play them between the drums. He'll stay on the snare drum, And you get, for me, I think it's a great, one of the basic things that you really want to throw in, even if you're not playing exactly what he played. I would throw those in as much as you can because he did. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a kind of fill that Bonham does frequently, and honestly, it might be some of my favorite fills are these very small, simple fills where it's just a play between the kick drum and the bass drum, the kick drum and the snare drum, and you hear this at the end of the at the end of the 12th bar of the first chorus, and it goes like this. Maybe it's not interesting to other people, but I just love, especially when you're in the groove of the song, just syncopating, just making a fill that is just between the snare drum and the kick drum. You know, all fills don't have to be, 30-second notes. Sometimes even those very simple ones can just kind of feel like something's moving underneath some bigger thing that's happening, which in the chorus is usually the vocal or the guitar line. So then in the last fill of that chorus, he does a snare fill with 8 notes. He does a similar kind of thing sometimes at the end of a verse, where he's just kind of doing a little syncopated roll on the snare drum. I'm picking this one to go through because I think it's particularly nice. So that's really a signal. We're going to a new place again. And especially when you're in the song and at the end of the chorus, I feel the chorus can start to push a little bit. Like I said, I'm over on the ride, I'm splashing around, I'm doing rolls, everything's big and swishy, and so my tempo can push back. When I want to get back into that verse and get back into that methodical, plodding kind of beautiful beat of the verse, this kind of fill is where you can start opening up the space to move back in time. Again, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can start it at one tempo and just slightly move it to where you're going in those hits. I really like to flam on that 3. I think that's just a nice addition, and I think he did something like that as well. Okay, so getting into the second chorus. Something that Bonham does to get into the second chorus is something that he does, again, in different places, and something that I do a lot. Hitting this crash on the and of 4, and then the crash on the 1 of the chorus. So the and of 4 of the descent going into the chorus. The first time that he does this in the second chorus, where he hits the crash on the and of 4 going into the next measure, is at the end of the 8th bar of the chorus. And that 8th bar looks like this. There's a fill there, one of those syncopated fills, like the ones that I was just talking about. So. Kind of just keeps settling you in, and he does that again in the 8th measure of that second chorus. In the 12th measure, he's going to do that 16th note triplet that we talked about in the in the first chorus, and this time he's going to start it on the 1, not the 3, and he's going to do 2 beats between the kick and the snare, like starting with the kick, but 2 beats on the snare, beat on the rack, a beat on the floor, or whatever drums that sound good to you might be cool to come from the 2 floors if you have them. So it's 1 triplet and triplet, 2 triplet and triplet, 3 triplet and triplet, 4 triplet and triplet. So that's it. Speed it up. Sounds really killer. And like I said, with those 16th notes, try even going one more into the first beat of the next measure and see if you can really screw yourself up that way. But it does sound really cool when you play over the bar line like that, especially with these fills, and Bonham did that all the time. Okay, this is a tiny little fill that I love. I was just talking about how sometimes fills don't have to be super fast or super busy in order to be really effective. And this fill, well, let me play it for you first. So this one comes at the end of the 16th measure of the second chorus. So check this out. And I'm just playing a measure before just to get myself in, because when I start from the fill, I always goof up. So it's just a basic beat, and then we'll go into the last measure. So notice that just putting the kick drum on the and of 1 and the 2, and then playing that snare drum on the and of 2, displacing the snare drum, playing the kick drum on the 2, playing the snare drum on the and of 2, it gives this impression like the beat has just for a moment turned around. It kind of makes you, it kind of brings you out of your body in this really funny way. It's such a simple thing, but just listen to this for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4, 1, and 2. It's really funny how that bump, 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 bah. I mean, it's just, for a second, everything gets wrong. We see how closely we hear that 2 and that 4 on that snare drum, and if that snare drum deviates from that, if the kick drum doesn't play on the 1, like, it feels like, you know, it basically he's just taken what he's played in most of the song and he's just set it ahead by an 8th note, and it is really cool. So just take a look at that. That's in the 16th measure of the last chorus. So those are the ideas behind a lot of the concepts of the filling in the choruses. So first of all, what I want to say about playing the chorus of this song is that for this lesson, I actually went through and relearned the chorus, because this is a part of Zepparella's set where I try to stay as true as I can to Bonham's version, but I do make it my own in some ways. And in the main way that I do that is that rather than stay on the hi-hat, which is where Bonham stays in the recorded version, and in many of the live versions that I've seen, he never goes over to the ride cymbal in the choruses. What I do is I go over to the ride and I keep time on the ride, and I fill as I'm feeling it, rather than sticking straight to the fills that Bonham did. Now, why do I do that rather than play exactly what he did? First of all, the fact that he stays on the hi-hat in the choruses is a surprising choice. Usually, in, I would say, 90% of songs, when we go into the big chorus, people want to open up and get a little splashier, and Bonham doesn't do that. He stays on the Physical Graffiti recording, he stays on the hi-hat through both of the choruses. And what happens when he does that is it adds to the spaciousness, the spookiness, and the vibe of the whole thing. There aren't the cymbals to get in the way. It stays over here. Now the hi-hat gets a little splashier, but it really does contribute to the overall spookiness of this song and the coolness, and it really makes all of the other melodic things that are happening, the voice and the guitar and the keyboard, it makes it all really pop out. Now, one reason that I decided to go over to the ride cymbal, which he does do in some live performances that I've seen, especially in the second chorus, he'll go over to the ride. The reason that I've decided to do that is because Holly, our lovely bass player, is playing bass the whole time. She doesn't move over to a keyboard. A keyboard fills up the sonic area a lot in a different way than a bass does. There's a lot more highs and mids, and that combined with the guitar creates this wash of sound that with a bass isn't as much there. So I felt when I played this live that when I went over to this nice washy 24-inch pasty ride cymbal, it filled up that sonic area that I wanted to fill up. So now I started this series talking about using your imagination, using your visualization in order to tell a story on the drums. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I think about when I'm playing the chorus of Kashmir. For me, because the song is so long, because I'm playing relatively the same beat for most of it, because there's so much tension in the beat, there's so much of that holding back. When we're coming into the last descent, I feel my body start to kind of fill up with the anticipation of getting into that chorus. And when I get into the chorus, you know, with that and hitting that crash on the and of 4 and then just coming over to the 1, like I want to just feel freedom. So when I think about that visual sense, that imagination, I actually kind of think about one of those pictures of those Indian deities with all of the hands and the arms just kind of swirling in a big circle. And when I'm playing, I like to kind of feel like I'm almost like playing in a circle. It's like a way of dancing. And I want to accent in those, in certain ways with what the punctuate, I want to punctuate, that's the right word. I want to punctuate what the guitar and the vocal is doing with the syncopated beats. I want to do beautiful rolls around the drums. I want it to feel big. I feel my spine lift up, and I want to share the beauty of Zeppelin. Oh my God.
You make yourself cry? Outtake that's ever happened. Clem moved herself to tears.
Oh my God, what a spaz.
You better put that in
I
it.
was the first one to cry during this whole shoot, so.
So, emotional content aside. All right. Lastly, how do you remember where the heck you are in this song? Because that descending thing happens like 40 times, and because there's a descent between the verses, there's a descent after the second verse, then there's another, then we go back to the verse for like 2, and then we come back into, I mean, it's just like there's all of these, that descent just will pop up and keep coming, and you're playing the same darn thing through the whole, everything. How do you remember? Well, I really, just in my mind, I can't count like how many I'm in. I just really try to think, okay, just played the verse, I'm playing the descent after the verse. Like I really have to be on my game and remembering which one I'm in, because if the chorus happens, if I'm in the descent and I'm not supposed to go to the chorus and I hit into the chorus, okay, at least I'm playing on the one. It sounds dumb, but then I can get back and kind of be like, oops, sorry everybody, and keep playing, and nobody's that affected. If everybody goes to the chorus and I think that we're not going to the chorus and we're coming back into the verse, then, okay, well then I guess I'm gonna crash on that 2 or that 3 and just, kind of be a wonky entrance to the chorus. But where I will really screw everything up is if I don't go into the bridge correctly, because there's that measure of 9/8 beforehand, and if I don't hit those da 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 into the bridge, then you can imagine that now everybody's time is going to be off. So so you have to keep track of where you are. And I said that I had a lot of tips for that, but I think everybody has their own way of remembering these things. But just make sure that you are aware of the structure of the song, because Zepparella's had many fantastic musicians sit in with us on this song, and I don't think any of them have ever gotten the structure right, no matter how brilliant of a player they are. You really have to focus. And so this is a song where you can kind of drift off into the dreamland of fairy dust that is this song, but I'm telling you right now, you better pay attention, because it's that, especially in that part, it's all you. You don't want to create the train wreck for everybody else. So that is Kashmir, my series on Kashmir, on Led Zeppelin's Kashmir on the drums. I so appreciate you watching these videos. I hope you learned a little something from it, and I look forward to the next series. Thanks for watching. Love and Led Zeppelin.